We're now joined by Chris Alexander, a former Canadian diplomat, to discuss what to expect from this week's G7 summit. Chris, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Theresa.
Now, Canada's tried to pull away from tariffs being the sole focus of this summit. What issues are you expecting will shape this summit?
Well, I think that's exactly right. Um, Tariffs are an issue that all G7 members are facing with the United States. Uh, Trump has dug his heels in on this. He's been aggressive on this. And so our Prime Minister Carney and the other G7 leaders are looking to broaden the agenda so that they can prove that coordination among these seven is still valuable in ways that will help them achieve a better relationship with Trump, so that they can then put the tariff issue into proportion and remind President Trump that the U.S. prosperity is built on the basis of alliances, coordination of political positions, joint action against threats and adversaries, which is something that he seems to have forgotten and wasn't very interested in during his first term. So it's not surprising that he is the bull in the china shop for this G7, nor is it surprising that Canada and the others would want to broaden the agenda. You heard Keir Starmer talking about. Gaza, Israel and Gaza was going to be on the agenda. Now it's going to be Israel and Iran. That will probably take up a lot of discussion.
Now, when Carney and Trump met this morning, President Trump alluded that Russia shouldn't have been kicked out of the G8. What do you make of that?
Well, it's absurd. First, he got his facts wrong. He said that Russia had been kicked out by President Obama and Prime Minister Trudeau, when in fact, Russia was excluded from the G8 the previous year in 2014 when Stephen Harper was prime minister. I know that firsthand because I was part of the government that took those decisions. And the reason for that was that Russia had invaded covertly at first and then more or less openly Crimea and parts of Donbass as far back as 2014. So it is Russian aggression, Russian invasion that caused their exclusion from the G8. And let's be honest, in retrospect, there probably wasn't a very strong reason to ever have them in the G8 because they had invaded Georgia in 2008. They had been supporting terrorist groups all through Putin's time in office. And they were planning this operation in Ukraine as early, we now know, as 2003. So there never was a Russia that was no longer imperialist, that was interested in the rules-based international order, that was interested in upholding basic principles of the UN Charter, at least not under Vladimir Putin.
Now, one item that is likely to take center stage is Iran's attack on Israel and vice versa. How aligned are all the G7 countries on this issue, especially given some of the protests that have broken out around the world?
Sure. Well, the protests will continue as we've seen them ever since October 7th, 2023. There's a strong network that is funded and organized to sustain these protests. The same network will now protest Israel's action over and in Iran. But let's also be clear, there is no member of the G7, including the United States under Donald Trump, that wants to see an Iran with a nuclear weapon. There was an agreement, as you know, 10 years ago to provide some sanctions relief to Iran in return for a very structured program to oversee Iran's compliance with international regimes to ensure they didn't get a nuclear weapon. Trump withdrew from that agreement in 2018 in his first term. And ever since that time, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, Iran has gone back to building centrifuges, putting in place the prerequisites for a nuclear weapons program. And just Friday, or was it Thursday, the day before Israel launched its attacks, the International Atomic Energy Agency declared Iran to be non-compliant with its obligations under the non-proliferation regime. So it's been a long story of this whole 2015 agreement breaking down, Iran putting in place the elements it needs to break out and achieve nuclear weapon status, and Israel's acting on the basis of that intelligence that everyone shares, that Iran is closer to having a nuclear weapon than it ever has been before. But in this case, Israel is the country that stands to play the highest price because Iranian leaders have said repeatedly that they would use such a weapon first and foremost against Israel. Some of them are committed to the elimination of Israel from the face of the earth. So this is an existential issue for Israel. I think the G7 understands why they're doing this, but there will be a difference over the means towards this end of preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon. They've had military success in the first few days, but will they have strategic success in preventing Iran from obtaining a weapon? That's still an open question, and there will be a lively debate right now on what comes next. I
Well,
mean, the
Chris, thank
idea of
you.
de-escalation seems to me
Sorry,
irrelevant at this
sorry,
point. It's
I
now
do
a
have to
war.
interrupt you. We have run out of
Please,
time, but thank you so much for the time today.
pleasure. Thanks, Teresa.